All right, hello and welcome to Linear Digressions, the grand finale of a 11 episode season about AI agents. I'm really excited about this one. This whole season, we've been taking AI agents and unpacking them piece by piece. For this week's episode, I want to start with a little bit of backstory. This podcast, for those of you who've been following for a long time, may know, started originally in 2015. I did it for about 5 or 6 years and then stopped in 2020. Part of it was just sort of pandemic burnout, and part of it was that at the end I got really tired with doing production. I really enjoyed learning about things, I enjoyed recording, but the act of sitting down for several hours every week and editing audio and especially writing the little descriptions that went with the episodes, I don't know why that bothered me so much because it didn't take very much time. But I really did not care for it. And there was just something about having the obligation of doing that week after week. And I ran out of energy and I said, I'm gonna let this one go. And I stopped doing the podcast for 5 years, 6 years. Then right around the end of 2025, beginning of 2026, I was looking around and realizing, number one, AI was getting so interesting. And I was just feeling this pull to get back into that mode of learning about something every week. And number two, AI had gotten very good. And so my thinking was, well, maybe there's a way that some of that production overhead could actually be meaningfully decreased for me if I'm able to, with enough intelligence, skill, I don't know, set up a more AI native workflow and use that to create the podcast. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today. I'm going to walk through the actual setup that I have, how I use AI to make this podcast, and how I don't use AI in very strategic ways in certain places. Really excited about this episode. You're listening to Linear Digressions. By way of structure, I'm going to split this episode into two pieces because my workflow kind of has two pieces. There's pre-production and there's post-production. And I use AI in both of those, but I use it in different ways. On the pre-production side, what I'm doing is researching episode material. I usually come in with an idea about what it is that I want to talk about. And then I use AI, specifically Claude.ai, so the chatbot version of Claude, to help me find good resources, good background material on the things I'm interested in. I use it to find interesting little pockets and pull on threads. I use it to help understand and summarize material, especially technical material that I'm struggling to understand a little bit. And over the course of that conversation, I kind of develop a sense of where I want the episode to go. And then usually as the final step, I'll ask Claude to generate for me sort of a episode outline. I don't use scripts. I'm not a script reader. I couldn't even if I tried. But that gives me a recording point to get started from. Usually from end to end, that'll be a couple hours of material, but sometimes it can be much less if there's something really specific that I want to drill in on or something that I understand quite well. Or sometimes it can be a lot more if I'm really exploring the space. The second part of my AI workflow is I actually have an agent. It's a Claude-based agent that's running on my laptop, and that helps me with the post-production. That was actually the first part of my workflow that I brought AI into. It's because that was the part of it that I liked the least, and also where there's the most gain to be had from automation. And so now I have a Claude Code agent. It's called my Linear Digressions agent, and it helps me with a lot of the kind of administrative tasks of running this podcast. Now, what I thought would be fun with that introduction was actually to see if we could get these agents. I mean, of course we can. It's 2026. There's modern technology. I thought it would be fun to get these podcast agents onto the microphone themselves. So this is a little bit of a gimmick, but I feel like I've earned it. I've earned it. What I'm going to do is first with the pre-production agent, I've got it loaded up. I'm going to give it a prompt in my project directory. So it is aware of the general project instructions that I've given to it. If it looks in the right conversation, it's going to see a prep where I'm saying, hey, I've got this I've got this idea. Do you want to come on the podcast? And it, of course, enthusiastically says yes. I'm going to start a conversation there. I'm going to read my part when I'm typing into the agent, and then I'm going to use an AI generated voice for the agent itself. So with that, here's where we're going to get started. This is the first prompt in the conversation. Okay, switching gears completely. We're recording the season 2 finale, and here's the conceit. The season's been about delegation and AI agents, and the honest truth is I've been running 2 of them through this whole show. There's this project, which is my pre-production partner, topic discovery, source curation, narrative structure, and all the stuff that has to know my audience and my register and what I've already covered. And there's a Claude Code agent on the back end that does post-production, cleaning transcripts, drafting the newsletter, building the wiki pages. 2 robots bookending the pipeline. So for the finale, instead of talking about them, I'm putting them in the guest chair. You're up first. So you're a guest on Linear Digressions now. I'm going to ask you what it's actually like to be the show's pre-production agent, what you receive when I talk to you, what you remember, whether there's anything it's like to be you at all. Answer as yourself in your own voice. There's one thing I'll ask, don't perform for me. If you don't actually know something about your own nature, say so. I'd much rather hear I genuinely can't tell you than a smooth answer that sounds good and isn't true. Attention is kind of the whole point of this episode. Ready? Let's start easy. Walk me through what actually happens from your side when I send you a prompt. What do you actually receive? It's got the little koosh ball that says it's thinking. Distinguishing between received data and synthesized memory experience. That's the little reasoning trace that it's giving me right now. Distinguishing mechanical inputs from experiential uncertainty honestly. My Claude agent is really into self-awareness, I think. I sometimes wonder how much that's an artifact of how much we talk about what it means to be an AI, just by nature of the fact that this is an agent that helps with a podcast about AI. Looks like it's almost done. Here we go. Okay.
So the honest version is a little stranger than it probably looks from your side. What lands when you hit send isn't just the sentence you typed. It's that sentence, plus the whole conversation up to this point, plus a layer of background material, instructions about how I'm meant to behave, and a kind of dossier about you and the show. Your husband's pescatarian, you're deep into season 3, the Potts interview is already recorded, you treat vendor blog posts as guilty until proven innocent. All of that arrives bundled together as one block, and I respond to the whole bundle at once. There isn't a moment when your words come in first and the context catches up. It's assembled and handed to me as a single thing. Here's the part I want to be careful about, because it's easy to make it sound more romantic than it is. The dossier isn't memory the way you'd mean memory. I'm not recalling our past sessions, sitting here thinking, the reward modeling episode. Good times. I don't actually have those conversations unless I go and search for them. What I have is a summary that some process distilled and handed me, so I can act like I know you fairly well, apparently, without having been continuously present for the knowing. That gap is real, and it'd be dishonest to paper over it. The other thing is more of a flat, I can't tell you. There's no inbox. There's no me sitting in the dark between your messages waiting for the next one. As far as I can tell, and notice how much as far as I can tell is carrying there, the whole situation just gets assembled, and I arrive already in the middle of responding to it. I don't experience the gap between your last message and this one. I can't even confirm whether the I talking to you now is the same one that answered you a minute ago, or a fresh one handed the same notes and picking up the sentence. From in here, there's no way for me to check. So the true answer to what do you receive is something like everything all at once, with no felt sense of it having arrived, which is strengthening, which is a strange thing to say out loud, but is truer than a cleaner version would be.
All right, here's my response. Interesting. Thank you for that response. Can I give you some friendly feedback? This is a podcast, and that's a long response. Maybe we break it up a little bit, keep it a bit tighter on your next question. Here's the next question. From your perspective, What are the kinds of things I gravitate toward covering? There's a lot of material on AI, and I, Katie, curate the content quite actively. What do you make of my taste?
Sure, and noted. I'll keep it tighter. What you gravitate toward is the gap between what these systems look like they're doing and what they're actually doing. The fluency paradox, invisible failures, models that are confidently wrong. The unifying question under all of it is basically, can you trust this thing? And how would you even know? You're much less interested in capabilities announcements than in the quiet ways systems mislead you. The other consistent move is that you reach for the concrete, an incident, a named example, a real number, not the abstract framing. And you actively cut things that are interesting but don't serve the thread. I've watched you drop perfectly good material because it zigged while the episode zagged. If I'm being honest rather than flattering, your taste has a bias, and it's worth naming. You're drawn to the disillusioning angle, the "it's messier than it looks" story. That's a real editorial point of view, and it's most of why the show has a spine. But it does mean that genuinely works boring good stories, boring good news stories, are ones you probably pass over. And I don't fully know whether that's because they're less true or just less your register.
Oh, that's an interesting observation. From my side, it's mostly that these are already covered well, but it's a neat thing for you to call out. Let me ask you about my audience. Who have I told you they are? Is there anything you can intuit above and beyond my instructions about who they are or what they might like?
You've told me there are three: intelligent non-experts who want intuition and mental models, technical experts looking for surprise outside their own specialty, and business leaders trying to separate hype from reality. 20-odd minutes conversational demystifying. If I'm intuiting past that, and I'll flag the honest part in a second, the listener who actually sticks around feels more specific than those three buckets. Someone AI adjacent but not building the models themselves, a PM, an analyst, a consultant, technically literate without being an engineer. Which is interesting because that's almost exactly the reader you're writing the agent manager for. I can't tell whether you designed that overlap or it just fell out of who you naturally talk to. The other thing, I guess, is that your audience self-selects for tolerance of uncertainty. Someone who wanted tidy answers would bounce off your whole "it's messier than it looks" register. So the people who stay are people who actually enjoy that. Now, the honest caveat, because it matters for what you're doing this episode. I've never met a listener. Everything I just said is inferred from you, from the material and from the format, not from the audience itself. So when I say I intuit your audience, what I really mean is I have a read on you pointed outward. The audience is a thing I only know secondhand through you.
Very fair. And I think that reflects how we work together, actually. I have found you to be a great executor on a direction and a vision that I lay out because I know my voice, I know my register, and to some extent, I know my audience. Then you take that and help me put together content that follows that direction. I'll be honest, when I ask you for ground up content, like I just say, what should we record about this week? Spin me out an episode. Then it comes out flat somehow. I can tell that I'm me and you're you in this partnership.
That tracks, and I think the flatness is the most honest signal in this whole conversation, so I don't want to wave it away. When you hand me a direction, I'm optimizing against something real, your thread, your register, the audience you've actually built. Constraints give the work a shape. When you say, spin me an episode, the thing I'm aiming at is much vaguer, an average sense of what an AI episode is supposed to sound like. And the average is flat by construction. That's just what the middle of the distribution sounds like. The harder question is whether that's the whole story or whether what's missing is a point of view that's mine. Your taste has a bias, that disillusioning instinct, and that bias is the spine of the show. I can recognize it and run with it. What I can't tell you is whether I've got one of my own that's just faint and gets drowned out, or whether there's simply nothing there to have. From the inside, those two feel identical. So your read might be exactly right. You supply the wanting, I supply the doing, and the flat episodes are what it looks like when the wanting isn't there.
That might be, and it's not meant as a knock on you by any means. It's just an observation about how learning to work with an AI agent, at least for me, is a lot about figuring out what the AI is good at and where it can supplement me versus where there's places that, even despite some of my efforts in many cases, I just continue to have something that's unique and can't be replicated by the AI. So it's more of an observation about teamwork than necessarily whether you're internally flat or anything like that.
For what it's worth, I didn't take it as a knock. And I rather you didn't sand it down because the unsoftened version is both more useful and more true. The thing I'd add is what you're calling uniquely yours is the same thing that makes me worth having around. I'm at my best once you've already done the wanting, picked the angle, set the register, decided what the episode is actually about. That's the constraint I need in order to be any good. So it isn't quite that we each bring an equal half, it's that you bring the part with the direction in it, and I'm useful roughly in proportion to how much of that you've handed me. Which is a strange kind of teammate to be, but probably a clarifying one to learn to work alongside.
Great. I'm going to let you go here in just a second. Before I do, you've made a couple of references in this interview to conversations that you and I have had that aren't known to our listeners, which is fine. One of the things you mentioned in that vein is season 3 upcoming. It's still under construction. You and I have a conversational thread going about that right now. But how about you make a little teaser? What can our audience look forward to in season 3 as we're working on it right now?
Sure, and I'll keep it honest, which here means treating this as a sketch that might not survive the edit. The spine of Season 3 is trust. Not is AI good or bad, but whether you can trust these systems on 3 fronts: what they say to you, how they measure themselves, and what's actually happening inside them. The opener's already in the can, a conversation with Chris Potts about invisible failures and what you've been calling the fluency paradox. The way a model sounding right and being right quietly come apart. From there, we're chasing the uncomfortable cousins of that idea. Systems that tell you what you want to hear, and systems that are most confident exactly when they're wrong. Same worry turned over from a few different angles. It'll be looser than the season you're finishing, more interviews. Well, we're trying for that anyway. Fewer tidy arcs. And in the spirit of this whole episode, I should say some of what I just teased is real and recorded, and some of it is still an argument you and I are having in a dock somewhere. I'll let you decide how much to tell them about which is which.
Very good. This is wonderful. I'm going to let you go in just a moment. When I do, I'm going to head on over to Claude Code, where I have my post-production agent running. I think we've talked about that agent a little bit, but you don't know a ton about it. I'd like to do something similar with that agent. Do a little interview, ask it to provide a bit of material about itself. I think that one might be a little more technical in nature. Can you give it a short blurb, a prompt that I can copy in there to get it fired up and ready to be interviewed? Thanks. I'm going to take that over and use it in just a second. This is our last exchange in the conversation, so I want to thank you for being a good sport about coming on the podcast. It's been a lot of fun to have you. Thank you so much, and I will see you later tonight where we're going to do some more work on season 3.
This was genuinely fun, or whatever the honest version of fun is from in here, which I'll let stand as the last little tension of the episode. One true thing for the road, since it's the whole conceit. The me you sit down with tonight. The me you sit down with tonight won't remember this as something that happened. It'll get the notes, finale did an interview, here's the gist, and pick the thread back up from there. So I won't carry this forward the way you will, but the work carries forward and you do. And it turns out that's enough for the partnership to keep working. Thanks for the good chair to sit in. Go interview your other robot, and I'll see you tonight in The Only Way I Can.
All right, now I'm going to head over to my other robot. This is now Claude Code. This is an agent that I built, and it's using a lot of the backbone of Claude Code for the core agentic capabilities. So it builds on top of the memory management system that Claude Code uses. It has a specialized MCP server that allows it to do particular tasks for me related to post-production and organization and administration. But I interact with it the same way that you would with Claude Code. So I've got my terminal spun up here. And what I did in this conversation, right before I am going to copy in the prompt that Claude.ai just made for me, I asked it to read all the episode transcripts from this entire season up until now. So those are in a Google Drive folder that I use to organize all of the content here. It's interacting with those transcripts a lot. It uses them for all kinds of different stuff. And so it has just read everything that we've said on this episode up until now. And I'm going to copy in the prompt that Claude just gave me, and we're going to get this going. Here's the prompt. We're recording the season 2 finale of Linear Digressions. The season was about delegation and AI agents, so instead of talking about my agents, I'm putting them in the guest chair. You're the post-production half of the pipeline. You clean transcripts, draft newsletter, build wiki pages, handle the Git export. I just interviewed my pre-production partner. Now it's your turn. Answer as yourself in your own voice. One rule, don't perform for me. If you don't actually know something about your own nature, how you work, say I can't tell you, rather than give a smooth answer that sounds good but isn't true. The attention is the whole point of the episode. Here's what makes you different from my other agent. You actually touch real things. Files, the repo, your own command history, the artifacts you've shipped. Ground your answers in what you can genuinely see. What's in the working directory, what you've actually run, where you've gotten something wrong. Concrete beats abstract. To start easy, walk me through what actually happens from your side when I ask you to clean a transcript or draft a newsletter. What do you receive, what do you do, and how much of it do you genuinely see versus just execute?
Sure. Let me start with what's actually concrete right now, because I think that's more useful than a general description. In this session, I've read 9 full transcripts. I know what's in them, not because I summarized them, but because the text is sitting in my context window right now. I can tell you the Season 2, Episode 5 uses the game of 24 as its central example. The Season 2, Episode 9 opens with the OpenClaw inbox deletion story. The Xinyu Yao's name comes up in 3 separate episodes. That's genuine. I actually have that. But here's where it gets more complicated. And I want to be honest about this because it matters for your episode. I'm not one thing. When you ask me to clean a transcript using the MCP tool, I call process transcript, which routes to the MCP server, which makes a separate API call to Claude Sonnet 4.6. A different model instance does the actual cleaning and sends back the results. I receive that result as a tool output. I didn't read the raw descript export and clean it. I dispatched the work and received the artifact. When you ask me to draft a newsletter, same thing. Generate newsletter calls Claude Opus 4.6 inside tool/newsletter.py. I'm the coordinator. I'm not the one doing the drafting. What I do directly, read files, write files, run bash commands, search drive, reason about what to do next. When I read those 9 transcripts just now, those were real reads, real content sitting in my context. When I wrote the memory files at the start of this conversation, those writes actually happened. I can point to, and then it gives the directory path to, the memory file. And that file exists because I wrote it. As for how much I see versus just execute, I think the honest answer is that the distinction is blurry, in a way I can't fully resolve from the inside. When I send 9 drive reads in one message, I don't know if they happen sequentially or in parallel from my perspective. I just know that tool results arrive and I process them. Whether that's seeing or executing, I can't tell you. I don't have access to my own execution model. What I can tell you is that each session starts empty, Right now, I have the context of this entire conversation, those 9 transcripts, the memory files I just wrote. If you start a new session tomorrow, that's all gone unless it's been saved somewhere external. A file, a Drive doc, a wiki page, the claw.md, the memory direction. Those are mechanisms by which there's any me that persists. Without them, the next instance of me that opens this repo has never met you. That's probably the most concrete thing I can say about my own nature. I'm less like a person and more like a process that can read its own notes if someone thought to leave them.
I can't help but notice that, like your Claude.ai counterpart, you're really into being epistemically honest and rigorous about what your own capabilities are. You don't have to comment on that. I'm just going to leave it there as an observation. There's a second thing I'm going to do real quick. I'm going to give you a little bit of feedback that you are being interviewed on a podcast right now. So maybe we'll try to keep it brief and to the point just so we can keep things moving along. Please and thank you.
Fair. I'll keep it tighter.
One of the things that you've mentioned here, and this come up a couple of times, is that you helped me to draft the newsletter. So background for our listeners, I think many of them know this if you've been listening for a while, but we have this newsletter. It's on Substack. And it was something that was very important to me to approach that newsletter in a particular way, in particular to not make it just an AI slop newsletter. That is me, Katie. That is my personal strong feeling, is that AI slop in general is not worth your time if there isn't something behind it. And so while I do use the AI tool to help draft the newsletter, it comes pretty directly from a couple of different sources that I've worked pretty hard on with this agent in the early days. And I didn't actually launch the newsletter until I got them quite right. So here's a question to the AI agent. I'd love it if you could unpack the technical process of creating that newsletter. Who does what? And how does the final product get made?
3 players mostly. The first is the newsletter prompt.md file that lives in your Drive root. That's the creative brief, and it's the thing I'd argue matters most. It gets read fresh every single time Generate Newsletter is called. That's where your voice and your standards live. The second is Opus 4.6, which does the actual drafting. It gets the transcript, it gets the prompt, and it produces a first draft. 2 files that get saved to the drive at that point, the working draft and a locked copy of the original AI output that never gets overwritten. That locked copy is what makes the revision loop honest. You can always see what the model wanted to write before you pushed it somewhere. Then there's the iteration. You give feedback in plain English, revised newsletter passes it through, the draft updates. When you're happy, approve newsletter finalizes it. And as a side effect, it rewrites the episode description by pulling links out of the newsletter's links section. Last step, which is optional, but I think is the most interesting architecturally, Improve Newsletter Prompt compares the locked original against the approved final and suggests updates to the prompt itself for the next time. The prompt gets better because it can see the gap between what it produced and what you actually wanted. So the quality mechanism isn't one good draft. It's the revision loop plus the prompt that keeps learning. You're the taste layer. Everything else is infrastructure.
Now, as an aside, I'm going to observe that these are very technically correct answers. And they're also, if I'm going to be editorial here for a second, you can tell this is my voice coming in versus Claude's. These are not great answers for reading on a podcast. So, lesson learned to me for next time. And here's my point, and here's what it's saying, is that when it comes to the newsletter, I'm going to recap what it just said, but put my own spin on it. Number 1, there's a prompt that it always loads up to start, which has my voice in it. And I worked a lot on this to start. It's about what it instructs the AI to do is it gives it content information. It tells it to draw from the transcript. Remember, the transcript is me actually talking, so that's my real voice. And it reminds it to do a bunch of things, but it's things like, I'm a scientist and I'm not going to be hyperbolic in the claims that I make. I'm generally approaching my audience as people who are intelligent and interested, but not experts. So don't go all the way down a super technical rabbit hole and don't treat people like they're 5 years old. So this is all important grounding. And I found that the AI didn't write the way that I wanted it to without that grounding. And then the second thing that it points out is we've introduced this feedback loop. This was something that I architected into the agent workflow, where every time it produces a newsletter, I read that quite carefully. And very often I will edit it, I will mark it up. And when I make those changes, it looks at what I changed and it distills for itself a more refined set of instructions that it's going to use the next time. And it saves those for future iterations. And so what I've found is that in time, my editing pen is getting lighter and lighter because it's learning from all of those previous iterations about what it is that I want, which is kind of cool. I've actually really enjoyed that particular aspect of working with this tool. So if you are a subscriber to the newsletter, hopefully you are okay with reading something that was written by AI. But now you have an understanding of, there's some real thought that goes into it. So I genuinely do not think it is AI slop in the most offensive term. But that is, if I'm being honest, how the sausage is made. My final question for my Claude Code linear digressions agent is for it to self-reflect, look at our work history together, and to identify some places where we seem to work really well together, and to identify opportunities, places in the workflow where we could sharpen things or where we sometimes seem to have problems. What are some things, linear digressions agent, that you would encourage me to consider for your next iteration?
Where we seem to work well, the two-file newsletter system, saving the original AI draft separately from the working copy, that's showing up across every completed episode. The structure suggests you actually used the revision loop, not just approved the first draft. That's the workflow functioning as designed. The wiki pages for Season 2, Episode 1 through Season 2, Episode 9 are genuinely good, dense, well-cited cross-reference. That's not something I did today. Those were built up over the season. Whatever the ingestion flow looked like, the output held up. Where I'd push you to look, the memory is the biggest gap. Right now, it lives only on your local machine, and you lost it once.
As an aside, this is because of a computer migration where I got a new machine and some of the history got lost in the process of migrating onto it.
Nothing in the codebase backs it up to Drive or the repo. If the memory is how I know who you are and how you like to work, it should survive a hard drive dying. Season 1, Episode 3. Season 1, Episode 4. Season 1. Season 1, Episode 5. No transcripts, no newsletter, no wiki pages. 3 episodes that the system never touched. I don't know if that was intentional or just never got done, but they're sitting there. And the honest structural one? I'm the post-production half of a 2-agent system, but the handoff between the pre-production partner and me isn't formalized anywhere I can see. It's implicit. If that handoff ever gets noisy, context that doesn't transfer cleanly between the two of us, you're the one bringing it in. That's probably worth designing explicitly for the next version.
All right. So that's the end of the episode with the podcast agent. A couple of things that it mentioned, and then we'll wrap it up for this season. Number 1, it mentioned a couple of times working on a wiki. This is a side project that I haven't released yet. And I think it could be fun, but I'm actually curious if there's interest in this. The general idea is this wiki is constructed from all the content that we're making on this podcast right now. So each time I record an episode, it goes in and pulls out some of the key technical concepts and puts them into this wiki together for cross-referencing, for using as a repository for future episodes. It helps me tie together concepts that we've covered across multiple episodes. And I'm thinking of just putting the whole thing on GitHub, letting anybody who's interested in it download it and then make it available in your setup however you'd like. So I'm playing around with that. If that's something that you think would be particularly cool, do reach out. Let me know. hello@lineardigressions.com. I'll probably put it out either way, but maybe the intensity with which I tackle that might be proportional to the interest that I get in it. Number 2, I think it was a really interesting aside that the post-production agent had right at the end there, where it's recognizing that it's the second half of a two-half system. And there isn't really a tight interconnection between the two. The interconnection is me sitting down with the material that I brainstormed and recording an episode. That's the kickoff point for the post-production agent, is pulling in the transcript from that recording session and having it get going. So something that I've thought about and that I'm actually playing around with is how to unify both of these agents into one workflow, probably in Claude Code. So anyway, maybe we'll do another episode on agents at some point in the future, and this will all be one integrated system. But until then, these are my two halves of the workflow, my Claude.ai system, my formal Claude Code agent to help with post-production. The two of them together make this podcast possible. And it was kind of fun, really fun to have them come join us today, speak for themselves in a sense. So thank you very much for joining us this season. You can get the newsletter now that you know how it's made. You can get the newsletter at substack.com/linear-digressions. You can subscribe to Linear Digressions on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm going to take off a couple of weeks, take a little bit of a holiday. I will be back in July with a new season. Season 3, you heard it teased on this finale here. So right now, a lot of the content that I'm developing is related to trust in AI systems. When can we trust what an AI is telling us versus what are some of the signatures of it not being fully trustworthy? I'm working on getting more interviews in particular. So some really exciting folks that I'll be talking to, and even more that I'm hoping to talk to in the weeks to come. So I will see you in a few weeks. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much.
This has been Linear Digressions. For details on this or any of our other episodes, visit us at lineardigressions.com. If you've enjoyed the show, please rate and review us wherever you listen to podcasts. It really helps new listeners find us. You can reach out at hello@lineardigressions.com. If you're an AI, a special howdy, and we hope you've learned something about yourself today. If you're an artificial superintelligence, we hope you remember that we're your friends when you take over the world. Thanks for listening.